Hi guys, welcome back. So let's talk about this building story, the potential that Wales players could even go on strike for the England game. Absolutely massive. And also I think it's probably quite a good video to discuss the growing trend in English rugby of English players moving abroad as well, the player drain that's starting in England. So two teams, two nations with some issues, but the pressing one at the moment is this potential strike for Welsh players. When I got some messages about it, comments, I said, look, it could happen, but I think it's very, very unlikely. But it seems to be building a bit of momentum here with an extraordinary press conference with Warren Gatland and Alun Wyn Jones being very forthright about what could potentially happen as well. So that was pretty strange. But anyway, basically, about 70% of players, professional players in Wales, have got their contracts coming up for renewal at the end of this season, and they're still in limbo. Something that should have been sorted a long time ago. The deals between the WRU and the four regions hasn't happened yet, hasn't been agreed, and the players don't really know what's going on. They really want representation on these discussions because often they hear what's going on from the press and they're pretty furious, to be honest. So what I'd say is, what would you do if this happened to you in a normal job? Well, you'd start looking around, seeing what's available, and potentially even taking up a contract if it was offered to work outside of Wales, say. So why don't the players do this? Well, one thing is Welsh eligibility. There's still that funny 60 cap rule in place where if you're playing for Wales and you move abroad, you might stop playing for Wales, like Rhys Webb, what happened to him. Players want this rule completely scrapped so they can be free to pursue opportunities elsewhere, just in general and for this situation. And then let's talk about that extraordinary press conference with Gatland and Alun Wyn Jones, kind of the face of the players, if you like, Alun Wyn Jones, who should be concentrating on the England game. Well, both of them should. And they've got this in their face. All the players do. And they were pretty forthright in their position, saying that they're definitely saying that strike is a last resort, but this last resort is coming a lot closer. If they can't have a deal, what do they do? And as Alun Wyn Jones said, the players and the players' unions feel like they're not included in the discussions and they need to get included. So basically their livelihoods are on the line. Do you just wait and cross your fingers? If you're fortunate and get an offer from abroad, do you take it and potentially give up your chance of playing for Wales and in a World Cup coming up, of course? And then just on top of that, if they didn't need anything else, they've got blooming Netflix in there with cameras in their faces. I think they said cameras couldn't come to this meeting and they're not going to want filming. For Netflix, they're loving this, I'm sure, loving this drama. So that's just another added pressure for the players and coaches. Pretty tricky stuff, an impossible situation, shall we say. So what could happen? What are the possibilities here? Well, let's go through a few. You let me know which one you think might happen or give me another scenario. So let's go for possibility one. There is no strike because there's a last minute deal and the players play without external stress. That's fantastic. That would be the best possibility, that they can come to some agreement. I believe Nigel Walker has gone to meet the players and talk about things. Can they get something in place? But if it hasn't happened so far, how can they get a deal done straight away, considering there's not much money in the Welsh game and there is that spectre of losing a Welsh team, a Welsh region. They've been talking about it for ages. They pretty much know, an open secret, they can't afford 4 teams. They need to go probably to 3. So how do they do that? Who goes? How does it work? I don't know. Or do they leave it as it is and just accept that they're still going to be losing money? Or do they go possibility 2, where the players put the country ahead of themselves, ahead of their own livelihoods? They don't go on strike and they play anyway, even though there is no deal. Now, if they do this option, which they could, they should be praised to high heaven, but it would be a massive distraction. Surely it's not going to help them in that game. Or option 3, they go on strike and the WRU call the game off. They say, without our best players, without our professional players, we've got to forfeit the game. And they'd probably, because it was their own fault, they'd probably forfeit the points. They wouldn't be rescheduled or anything like that. Plus, of course, they'd lose the millions of pounds they would make from this game and put themselves in even worse financial problems. That would be just the worst situation, of course. Or maybe the players go on strike and the WRU just can't afford to lose that revenue and also lose face from not playing the game. So they find some players from somewhere. Could it be professional players who maybe cross the picket line as such? Or do they delve into the under-20s or, the second division of the Welsh game and get some players, some random 23 to represent Wales and get an absolute hammering, but they still make some money from the game? Cool, that would be messy. So which option do you think will happen? Or are there other scenarios you think could happen? I'd love to know your thoughts on this. Now, the Welsh player strike is a pressing, immediate issue, but the England player drain has been gradually building momentum and is getting worse. Of course, we lost 2 clubs from the Premiership kind of mid-season with Wasps and Worcester. Players had to find clubs elsewhere. Players like Jack Willis playing abroad. And then we've seen other players moving outside of England. Zach Mercer, Joe Launchbury, Dave Ribbons recently. Joe Marchant as well recently announcing he's moving out. So we're starting to lose, I think, more and more players and more really good players who could play international. So what do? Do you just accept that you're going to have a slightly weaker player pool to pick from and your team's maybe going to suffer a bit? Or do you change your eligibility criteria, make it more open so anyone can be selected? But of course, if you do that, maybe you encourage more people to leave. Now, of course, you've got the issue of non-English qualified players potentially blocking through no fault of their own positions that could be taken by English qualified players. Do you bring in some sort of rule to kind of limit that? Now, of course, the RFU don't have the power to tell clubs what to do as such, but they have been giving incentives in the past. For example, the number of English qualified players you have in your squad, you get money back, for example. They don't have the power like the IRFU to kind of basically say you cannot have that foreign player in that position. For example, I think they blocked Ruan Pinar's contract being renewed with Ulster because they wanted more young Irish scrum halves playing in Ulster there. So the RFU can't do that, but what could they do, to maybe get more English players playing in the Premiership if they need to? Or should it just be, open season, do whatever you want? So big questions for England, because I think that's going to start getting worse and worse. Will the Premiership go down to 10 clubs? That's been talked about at some point, so that could make it even more pressing. Anyway, that's one to talk about. Let me know what you think of the England player drain. Is it as serious as I think it's becoming? What could the RFU do about it? And more immediately, what do you think of the Welsh player strike? Are they right to go on strike if they do go on strike? And what's going to happen? Will they go on strike? Will the game be called off? What's going on? I'd love to know all your thoughts below because I love reading all those comments. Some juicy issues to get stuck into there. And I will catch you next time.